perform integrated change control. So this is the fifth process of the knowledge area project integration management, and the inputs to this process is the project management plan, work performance reports, change requests, and after change request, what we have is the standard EEF, which is enterprise environmental factors, and then comes your OPA, which is organizational process asset. So you should be very clear on the last two. And what I need to now tell you over and above the names of the respective processes, that the monitoring and control area for this particular knowledge group has two processes in it. The one which we talked on is monitor and control project work, which we just finished. And the second which we are into, which is perform integrated change control. So this is the second area in the monitoring and controlling. Yes. Fifth area from the project integration management perspective. Okay. So let us look at the perform integrated change control. The tools and techniques, they remain expert judgment and meeting, which is the item which we have used in the previous process. The change control tool is something which is coming up as the new item in the tools and technique. The output what this process yields into is an approved change request, because it is the process of the change control. So of course it would lead into the change request and approved change request, various change logs because you are making the changes, and the another two outputs remains the same as our previous process, which is project management plan update and the project document updates. So what is the process of change management? I have shared with you on this process maybe in various discussions. Let me bring it back again to you with the words which I have used during the discussion called a CCB, which is a change control board. Let me start with the first activity in this process. So change management is a process which is a process of raising the change request. And why those changes are created is that once you start reviewing the progress, once you start reviewing and tracking the progress of each of the process areas, you realize that the output which is getting produced, this output may or may not be in the line of the expectations or with respect to the baselines what we have agreed. And that forces you to initiate a change request so that the remaining portion of the work we can execute and implement in a way that I meet my project objectives, I meet my final baselines, and that is where there is a need for us to put those change requests. So once we raise a change request, the change register gets updated. We also look at the impact what this change is going to bring in onto the various other processes. And we also involve the subject matter experts to look at whether those kind of changes which we are going to bring in, whether they would be leading into the any such impact onto the other processes. And before we go to the change control board, it is expected that the project management team and the project manager they have done the impact analysis and you have considered what are the positive and negative impact of a particular change which you are going to bring in. So remember one thing, before you go to the change control board, it is expected that you guys have considered all the possible options to look at why the changes is needed and why cannot you manage with the change. So you have considered all the pros and cons very clearly before you put back those changes back to the management and that to the change control board. Change control board has the right either to approve or to reject a plan. So remember, sending a change request to a change control board does not always mean that you are going to get an approval out of your change request. There can be some shortcoming in the impact analysis which we have done, and the change control board realize and maybe they have a perception basis the analysis what we have done. They feel like that no, this change is not really needed and the team can still manage to deliver without this change. So the final decision of the approval or a dismissal or the rejection lies with the change control board very clearly. And in case the change control board approves a particular change, in that scenario, you'll have to do the planning all over again because that change would have an impact on all the subsidiary plans, all the different processes. And just think for a while that you had initiated a change request to the time. Maybe you realize that for some unforeseen reasons, the project is currently running late by 2 months. You had raised that concern to the change control board with all the justifications, with all the impact, and you realize that by putting up the extra efforts, by expediting various activities, the best you can do is that you can only mitigate about 1 month out of that 2 months lag what you have, even if you put in the additional manpower. So that means if the change control board has actually approved another 1 month extension to your project, then this 1 month activity would have an impact on each of the planning portions of your processes. And very clearly, you might have to replan those activities and bring back all those activities back into the sync to ensure you are matching up to meet those timelines. And why that is needed is that because we have very clearly understood that once the project is getting started, lot of those processes, they would interact with each other in various stages. So at a lot of places you would have seen that the output from a various process is being fed as an input to some process. So if we are not in sync, then we would not be meeting up the time targets. And this is what I meant by the replanning of all the activities in each of the individual processes. Yeah. So when we are into a perform integrated change control, once we are into the perform integrated change control, we are into the monitoring and control process group area. We are into a knowledge and group. From the knowledge groups, we are into a project integration management, and we are on the 5th process from the project integration management perspective. All right, Jasudas, you are clear? So we heard about configuration management. So once we are doing a change, we'll have to also look at the various mechanism, various opportunity that this change would not impact the other activities, and if it is impacted, we have to replan those various activities. So configuration management activities are basically identifying what are the items we'll have to reconfigure. Any status accounting, that means pertaining to various the configuration status, anything which we'll have to redo, and we need to also look at the verification and audits. This is pretty much needed from the most of the industry's perspective when you talk about the configuration management. If a testing done in a construction line results that the output what is actually getting delivered is something not strong enough, so the configuration of various ingredients will have to be reworked. That if the initial configuration was actually telling you that you will have to use maybe 4 portions of the cement to be mixed with the other ingredients, and the quality aspect comes out and very clearly says that, hey, this is not strong enough, you might have to reconfigure and see whether you need to use the 6 portions of the cement from that. This is maybe from a construction perspective again. Let us look at managing the integrated change control. So project managers, they need to protect the project scope from being changed. Remember scope baseline. So one should try the best to ensure that the scope remains the same, because the scope is one thing that if the project scope is getting changed, it would have a major impact on each of the sub processes which are there as a part of this project. And with the change in the scope, I'm afraid this would directly lead to the more cost and maybe to more time. And this is what we mentioned on a triple constraint. So if you disturb one, the other will get disturbed pretty fast. And this you need to correlate back with a chapter which is called your project stakeholder management. And this is where I emphasized that once we identify the stakeholders, it is in the project manager's interest to identify all the stakeholders in the beginning of a project. And if you have identified the majority of the stakeholders before you have frozen on the scope, that would be the best thing for a project manager to deliver. Because once you have finalized the scope, and then if a stakeholder is asking for a change of the scope, then it is going to be a very tough task for you to bring in a change in any of the triple constraints. So the early you identify your stakeholders, better it is for you. And it would be easy from a stakeholder management perspective and to keep them satisfied if we know of the changes, the suggestion, the concerns well in advance. So as a part of the integrated change control, a project manager must provide for identifying a change which is proposed or which has already occurred, influencing the stakeholders so that the approved changes are incorporated into the project work. Remember, if the stakeholders are not satisfied, you will not get the satisfaction and maybe a kind of the mindset from those people into the project. The project manager must provide for reviewing various contents, reviewing change request, and you should maintain and manage the changes by the change request. Any change done here should reflect back a change in the baseline, which is your the triple baseline along with the quality, which is time, scope, cost, and quality. Considering the impact in a change request on the rest of the project, as well as considering all the knowledge areas which it is going to impact, we might have to redocument everything and look at from the perspective of the continuity on the defect repair validation and the quality control. So this is what which covers up the managing integrated change control.